Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you for those of you who are coming out to listen to this fireside chat on verified USD and how they're leveraging Layer 0 and a novel algorithm called ColorTrace. To introduce myself, my name's Irene. I'm head of strategy at Layer 0 Labs. Layer 0 Labs is the developer company behind Layer 0, which is the leading Omnichain interoperability protocol, and also the original developers behind Stargate Finance, which is the most widely used native asset bridge. Matt, who's joining me today, is president of the Verified USD Foundation. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure.
Press it up.
Hi there. MatthewCommons, president of the Verified USD Foundation. The Verified USD Foundation is the issuer of USDV, a Omnichain stablecoin, actually the first Omnichain fungible token stablecoin. It's a collaboration between Layer 0 on the technology side and Matrix Port on the operating side. So we've been live about 3 months, and really happy to be here today and share a little bit about what we're doing and how we can work with the community.
So to set the scene a little bit for people who are unfamiliar with USDV, Layer 0 Labs had been approached by a team that posed this question of how might we create a stablecoin that can share revenue or issue rewards back to its minters and subsequently the community that has helped grow it. And this problem is actually an age-old one. It's commonly referred to as the colored coins problem, meaning when you have one-to-one fungible tokens, how do you actually differentiate or store the traits and history of these tokens in a storage and compute constrained environment? For Bitcoin, there's this lossless metadata layer, but in an EVM environment, that would be an accumulation of addresses and information that is intractable in such a constrained environment. And this question was actually a very interesting one for us, a bit of a side quest compared to our primary focus, which is cross-chain infrastructure. But the outcome of it was this novel algorithm called ColorTrace. And the Verified USD Foundation is the very first token issuer that's leveraging this algorithm. My question for you, Matt, is you previously were CFO at Algorand. You have spent much of your career in this space. When you first heard of the project, what drew you to this stablecoin in a competitive stablecoin landscape?
Yeah, so first of all, I have been a huge fan of Layer 0 Labs for a long time. I was one of the reviewers on the original Layer 0 white paper, got to know Brian Pellegrino and the team, and really was very enthusiastic about working with them, and kind of like followed Layer 0 for a couple of years. And this was so when Brian reached out last summer, I was immediately interested and flew out to Vancouver and wanted to learn more about it just because of Layer 0's background and reputation. But my interest in stablecoins, I've always liked decentralized systems, permissionless systems, and it always kind of irked me a little bit that we had permissionless systems, and then there are these two centralized private companies sitting on top of this as the major issuers of, $100 billion plus worth of stablecoins. That is really like a key component of the decentralized economy. Like if you're going to be decentralized, why do you have, these huge points of centralization there? So, was interested in the concept of how to do it, and coloring the coins makes sense. Like if you can color the coins, then you can attribute value to the underlying, to the parties who brought capital into the system and share yield that way. But from a technical perspective, it's really never been possible to do that. If you have multiple different colors and you have one wallet, the complexity increases exponentially. So using a conventional, just kind of tagging each coin with with some additional data, that was not going to be scalable in doing it. So Layer 0 solving the colored coins problem was really key to unlocking this, and was immediately intrigued by it.
Yeah, to set the scene also a little bit for those listening, this isn't the first time that a team tried to share value back to their contributors. So if you look at Coinbase, for example, I believe last year Circle formed a very special partnership with them in which it now attributes to maybe $1 billion in value back to Coinbase every year. And so for all of the growth that Coinbase contributes to USDC and the volume across our ecosystem in centralized exchanges and elsewhere, they are sharing in the rewards of this. However, if Circle wanted to then share with, say, Uniswap, PancakeSwap, all of these DEXs for whom they attribute most of the growth of stablecoins in, say, like the BNB ecosystem or other L2s, there isn't actually a way to do this fairly and on-chain. You could perhaps trust off-chain that there might be some sort of marketing fee that's paid back to these protocols, but if it's not verifiable and on-chain, once again, it's almost like trusting your credit card company to give you points for what you have purchased with the card. So the problem is actually a really challenging one, and I think from an ethos perspective, the idea that protocols should actually be fairly rewarded for the growth of stablecoin ecosystems resonated really deeply with us. I think that monopolies are very prevalent within our industry, and for decentralized technology to actually properly thrive, there has to be competition. So my question for you then is, USDV is not only a stablecoin that is revenue sharing from the yield that it earns through short-term treasury bills, which are the current collateral, but it's also an Omnichain token. Can you talk a little bit about the product and in market, how it changes the experience for developers and then also for users?
Sure, absolutely. So, there are really three main differentiating features about USDV. One of them we talked about already, the ColorTrace algorithm, which allows us to share the yield of the underlying collateral equitably in the ecosystem through our partners who mint USDV. But there's two more. Another one is the on-chain transparency, because we actually have our collateral locked on-chain and really best-in-class auditing, Chainlink proof of reserves, et cetera. Then the third is what you mentioned there, Irene, which is we are the first stablecoin to use Layer Zero's Omnichain fungible token standard. So what this means is that all USDV is effectively born on ETH mainnet, because on mainnet is where the collateral in the term of the STBT treasury bill token is locked up. $1 of the treasury bill token stands behind every $1 of USDV. But because we're an OFT, there's a very straightforward way to burn USDV on ETH mainnet and then remint it on other chains. So today we are live on 7 chains. So mainnet, Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, BNB, Avalanche, and a Southeast Asian focused chain called Viction. But as you know, Irene, Layer Zero connects to over 50 different chains today, with more on the way, EVM as well as non-EVM. So when we look at the roadmap and expansion, we want to be native on more chains than any other stablecoin. I mean, today we're on 7, and the other big players are on 15. But we anticipate that sometime later this year we will pass by them and we'll never look back.
One of the unlocks of the OFT standard, Omnichain Fungible Token standard, is that once you have deployed this contract, you can, under, say, 15 minutes, or as easy as deploying an ERC20 smart contract, expand to new chains. And these addresses are the same. There's unified liquidity. There isn't a need for, say, pools or external LPs to enable this seamless horizontal composability. So take, for example, a stablecoin on Base, and a user who wants to now move that stablecoin to Arbitrum. Typically, you would have to do the 7-day bridge back period, and then from there, use the native bridge back to Arbitrum. With Layer Zero's OFT, you can pay in one click with one gas token and go from L2 to L2, or go from point to point within this mesh network. So for USDV, Viction makes a ton of sense. There is actually product market fit in Southeast Asia to launch on, say, Clayton, which is a very popular South Korean chain, or many others would take 15 minutes, say. And I'm curious, how are you guys thinking about the prioritization of different chains?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways, or a few different kind of data elements that fit into how we prioritize chains. So by far the easiest from a technical perspective are EVM-compatible chains where there's an existing Layer Zero endpoint. As you said, deploying an OFT is very easy. And then sort of within that universe, it's then a question of, we want to have some type of basic functionality on the destination chain. So, we'd like to have, some kind of a DEX as a partner that can be minting so you can get into and out of USDV. To the extent that there's not a bridge already, we'd like to have a bridge in place. and then moving towards having borrowing and lending. So it's really just sort of, can we get critical mass? We're limited to 7 chains, not because of any technical reason today. It's just, hey, is there interest? And I think here at ETHDenver, we've had a huge amount of interest from a number of chains, EVM as well as non-EVM. Again, non-EVM, it's a little more of a case-by-case basis, but I think if you look at Layer 0, they do have a number of non-EVM endpoints, more to come, and that's definitely part of our growth plan.
And for protocols, if you implement USDV or you list it, effectively how this works is your protocol is assigned a color. So let's take, for example, Uniswap. Any minted USDV or other stablecoins swapped into USDV would be colored pink, let's say. And even if these tokens leave the Uniswap protocol, they're sitting in some EOAs or they are inserted into some other protocol, so long as that token is colored pink, the yield is perpetually shared with Uniswap. It's about 2.5% or half of the short-term treasury token yield. And this means that you are effectively rewarded simply for the proliferation of these tokens in the space. Now, when there's some other protocol that has also registered as a colorer, if these tokens end up in their protocol, let's say it's Rainbow Wallet and their color is purple, they can pay a one-time fee to recolor and then get all of the yield from there on forth. So it creates almost an arena-like dynamic, which incentivizes, again, the growth of the stablecoin, but also the fair reward distribution verified, again, on-chain. This week, what have been the questions or the curiosities that have surprised you from developers who are asking you about USDV?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I think a lot of people have kind of gotten it. When you kind of spend a few minutes and sort of explain this idea of yield sharing, hey, it's not yield to the end user, but it's yield to the protocol, they can reinvest in the ecosystem, people get it, and there's like the light bulb goes off, and they're like, wow, this is the way that these things should be done. So we've had an enormous amount of positive feedback from it that's been really encouraging. Some of the typical questions we get, around how yield sharing works. So we'll kind of walk through, some elements of that. One thing I would highlight is that, 50% is sort of the floor of what we share with the yield. The other 50% goes to the foundation, but the foundation, again, we're a nonprofit entity. Our, mission is to encourage the USDV ecosystem. So a lot of times we'll work with the various DeFi protocols. In addition to the 50% of the underlying yield, we'll do some other type of emissions or matching incentives or things like that. Usually it's on a one-to-one basis, that the protocol or the partner will be putting up $1 of incentives, and the foundation will do that as well. So it can certainly go significantly above 50%, especially in the early days. I mean, a lot of the times we're trying to allocate this in areas where we think it's a good fit, and we want to make it grow, and incentives are a part of that.
And one of the key things, too, about distributing yield to the minters rather than end users is the issue around securities. And I'm curious, or would love to hear you expand on this a bit, having also been CFO at Algorand. Many lending and borrowing protocols are hesitant to list some of these next-gen stablecoins that directly issue yield to holders. It poses an enormous security risk. In this way, it is a particularly creative and novel mechanism to still reward contributors to the ecosystem. Could you just speak a little bit about that and how that's resonated?
Yeah, sure. So our underlying collateral token, we're using, as you mentioned before, Irene, something called STBT, or short-term treasury bill token. It is issued by an orphan trust that has no owners except the token holders. But it's really something that it is a security. It holds treasury bills. The treasury bills pay interest, and the STBT token pays interest. It rebases every day, including on weekends. So what that means, since it is a security, you have to be whitelisted, you have to be KYC'd, and at this point, it's only open to non-U.S. investors who are also meeting the qualified purchaser definition. So, which is sort of an asset financial threshold to show that they're sophisticated enough to do that. That's just where we are right now. So we don't have any minting in the U.S. You have to be non-U.S. entity, and you have to be able to do that. We hope that changes in the future. There is a stablecoin bill. There's a lot developing. Obviously, we're a USD stablecoin, and the U.S. is the largest crypto market. So, we'd like to have more active participation onshore in the U.S. We just need more regulatory clarity in order to do that.
The whole foundation is spending a lot of time in different regions, and I think over the last few months, there was also Stable Summit this week, a lot of conversation around where there's actually product market fit. What is an area of intrigue, and what kind of evidence has supported the foundation's investment in these spaces?
Yeah. So, as you can see, I mean, with our existing partner set, we've started with CeFi and DeFi, and that is definitely the place to start. It's quick. We can meet people here, say, hey, get on our chain, partner with our DEX, and it's a very, very quick process. We do some KYC, we sign a very standard form contract, and boom, you're set up as a minter, and we go. But really, the long-term growth, we see stablecoins in general, and certainly USDV in particular, extending well beyond just CeFi and DeFi, and really being used for payments, for savings, for remittances, other types of things. So there's a lot of interest in emerging markets. Really places where people don't have like Venmo and PayPal and an FDIC insured bank account in their pocket.
Can you name a few of these places that you visited?
Yeah, sure. So Argentina, for one, is particularly interesting, and we've got a very crypto-friendly libertarian president there now who's making a lot of changes. This is an economy that 10% of the physical U.S. dollars in the world are in Argentina because people don't trust the banks. They don't trust the government. They've had very bad experiences with their dollar bank deposits being seized and devalued in the past, and people buy houses with stacks of $100 bills there. And there is interest and real usage of stablecoins there today. Tether on Tron is kind of the largest incumbent right there now. But we believe that our partnership model, where we can share the yield back with partners in Argentina and other countries, is useful. So Argentina is probably a good example of like a hyperinflationary economy and why that's interested. Turkey is interesting as well, but lots of other emerging markets. Vietnam, we mentioned with what we're doing with Eviction. 100 million people, very young population, technically savvy, but also kind of underbanked largely in the conventional sense. So huge opportunities there and around the world.
As we're nearing up on time, and I want to try and reserve about a minute in case there are questions, what is a parting note here for how developers who are learning about USDV this week can engage or experiment with implementing USDV?
That's great. Well, we're over at booth 302, so that's kind of by the Polkadot and Near pavilions, just off of the Rainbow, next to Uniswap. So you can find us over there. USDV.money is a good place, and then from there you can find Twitter and other places. So yeah, but thank you so much, Irene. This was great, and
I think
really
a parting note from my side is having been deeply involved in the creation of the ColorTrace algorithm, there are other novel things you can do with it too. I was just speaking with one of the most widely used trading platforms, and they have always wanted to do on-chain ref links. How can you replicate the experience of referral links through, say, a centralized exchange, but now through a DEX or a trading platform? I'd love to see ColorTrace implemented in a novel way in that regard. And then with USDV, the kinds of protocols and products that are best suited for this model are anything that has high throughput of stablecoins going through it. Those are wallets, for example. These are DEXs, lending and borrowing platforms. Some of the protocols that you guys already work with are Frax, Venus, PancakeSwap, wallets like Beam by Eco, some Omnichain wallets as well, and then on centralized exchanges, BitGet and a few others. So I'm keen to follow on in the progress. We're certainly really excited to see ColorTrace used by developers right now, and thank you guys for coming. We have time for a few questions, so if you have any, please come up to the mic here, and you can also find us after.
So you mentioned that the stablecoin industry is dominated by two players, and we would like to see more competition. How many different stablecoins do you think the market could bear in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of different types of stablecoins out there now. I think, there's kind of algorithmic stablecoins, which are, I would say in a different category than, treasury-backed stablecoins. And algorithmic stablecoins, it will really depend on the platform. And we partner, actively with those. Frax is one of our launch partners. We want to be part of collateral of others. So, so algorithmic stablecoins, it's sort of, dependent on the number of successful DeFi protocols. For treasury-backed stablecoins, I think it's probably a smaller thing. Up until today, really table stakes where you had to be really big. So Tether, Circle, you had Binance in there for a while, PayPal now. You know, you've had to, in order to play in the game, you've had to have really heft in order to do that. What USDV allows is it allows partners to participate in the game, to share in the yield. They don't necessarily need to have their own stablecoin. They can get the benefits of economies of scale, fungibility, and so forth through partnerships. So that's kind of where we see the growth going forward.
Yeah, it can be very meaningful for protocols. If you take a look at PancakeSwap, for example, I think they make it's between 10 to $20 million a year, and yet the volume or the amount of stablecoin growth that they've accounted for is several billion. And with USDV, if they effectively convert many of their users to using it, it adds several $1 million to their bottom line. My point of view is that there are a few different angles. One, certain stablecoins serve different purposes. So algorithmic stablecoins are often used by like DeFi power users, and that will always be the case. Maker, for example, is launching a new stablecoin as well. That's something to watch, and I think their like target demographic is very different than, say, the demo of USDV, perhaps. And when you're selling a stablecoin, you're selling trust. I don't actually think that the market will be able to mindshare-wise sustain 15, 20 stablecoins. The real chain abstracted future in my mind is wallets and dexes that abstract away even like the tickers of different stablecoins. It just ends up becoming like an intermediary. It's something that's just pegged to $1. And so you could swap, say, USDT for USDV without performing the actual swap. It adds so many clicks into the process in which you're really just trying to send value to someone elsewhere. So the next few years will be interesting because there are very exotic stable coins, and we'll see if they're stable. But I really think the mindshare piece and the fact that you're selling the idea of trust is a scarce resource.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Irene. Really appreciate your time here and doing this, and yeah, looking forward to continuing our collaboration.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.